Answer. He is currently the Associate Dean and Associate Professor at Oxford University, Hyderabad. His expertise lies in cultural studies and ethnographic research, grounded in critical caste studies. He also podcasts and performs live under the moniker of Buffalo Intellectuals. Additionally, he is the author of Meet the Savanas, which is currently the #1 bestseller in cultural and ethnic studies on Amazon. Now, over to you, Ravikant sir.
You're muted. Okay.
Now, am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, you
Yes,
are.
sir.
Okay. Jai Bhim, Namo Buddhaya to everybody. Thank you for calling me and making me part of this conversation. I'm very happy to be here amongst all of you. And my topic today is a little bit about, the politics and how we need to look at the idea of Bahujan politics in the current scenario. And how do we contrast that with Savarna political systems? And mainly, how should we understand what is going on politically, what can we do in this system, and what should be our priorities? And as mentioned in my introduction, I'm a professor of cultural studies. I look at discourse and culture in many broad ways, and I do study politics and especially elections, but not just about elections in the current sense. Like I also look at it historically a lot. Sorry, I'll slip into Hindi sometimes because English, while I'm comfortable now, it is a language which I have learned later in life. So like beach beach mein I will slip into Hindi, and although I'm not a Marathi speaker, I understand a little bit of Marathi also, and I speak Bangla and Punjabi. But Hindi beach beach mein will come. I hope that is okay. Um, what I was saying is that, it's not just about the current political scenario, the current seats and things like that, but also, yes, kahan se? What is the historical basis for some of these developments, right? Like what has been the system like? So before I get into the talk, I would just request kindly if someone can let me know uh, how are we structuring this? Like how long should I speak? Is there going to be a Q&A? So I can accordingly adjust. Otherwise, I can talk endlessly. So if you can just let me know, that would be very useful.
So you would have 45 minutes of talk and then 10-15 minutes of QA sessions.
Okay, okay, fantastic. So 45 minutes, 45 minutes I'll talk and then we can talk about it. So basically the topic for me today is contrasting political cultures, Savarna politics and Bahujan political priorities, which is a very interesting kind of discussion because right now, if you look at India, something very interesting is happening where the Ambedkarite movement is culturally the strongest it has perhaps ever been, where uh, people like me are getting published, by Savarna publishers, Penguin and all of them. They are publishing our books. Recently in Bollywood, Karan Johar Dharma production, I think film Dhadak 2 has come with theme is on intercaste love. Newspaper stories on caste. In political arena, if you go in Lok Sabha, BJP and Congress are fighting with each other like, we respect Baba Sahib more, we respect Baba Sahib more. So, in a sense, culturally, socially, discourse wise, when Baba Sahib Jayanti happens, is like, celebrated with big, um, passion and, lakhs of people on street and in 50 cities, 60 cities, and all that. And parties are building different political parties. Savarna political parties are building Baba Sahib statue and all that. But if you look at the political arm of the movement, BSP and even other Ambedkarite parties, VBA and all, they don't seem to be getting the political success. So it is a very strange kind of a thing to understand, like what has actually happened here, right? Ek taraf your cultural movement is so strong, uh, where your historical, the Savarna system, which never even acknowledged caste, and they are now talking about caste, writing books, making movies, and all that. And on the other side, that cultural success is not translating into seats won. So, how do we make sense of this? It is a very interesting question, and it should make us look at politics a little differently. The other thing that I want to set up right at the beginning is, if you look at like social media discourse, and especially on Twitter and Facebook and all of these things, there's a lot of this conversation about, oh, Modi's India and BJP and XYZ, and Congress is good and Modi is bad and all that. So everything gets framed in this binary of Congress versus BJP, and RSS is bad or good, or depends on whoever is the person talking about. So this needs to be looked at slightly differently, which is why I said कि चीजें यहाँ तक आई कैसे, historical context becomes slightly important. So before elections only, I want to talk about nationalism a little bit, and like just to understand how our movement, or how the Ambedkarite movement, what role it has played. Um, if you look at history of South Asia, after the British left in 1947, India is the only country in South Asia which has not had a military coup. Pakistan had it, Bangladesh had it, Nepal has had civil war, Sri Lanka has had civil war and military rule and all kinds of things. India is the only one which has not seen something like that. So, is it because our institutions or military or something like that is just so much more disciplined, and that we never went down that road? Could be a possible answer, but I think the other answer is actually the role played by the Ambedkarite and the anti-caste movement. See, one thing that happens in partition, this is a lot of my work, including my book and so on. I'm very interested in figuring out ki, you know, like when you talk in social sciences and culture, कुछ चीजों को ना आपको fact की तरह they will just say कि this is a fact, right? Like Nehru good or Nehru this and this that. We are presented these items as a big fact, and that can be. But I'm very interested in how these base assumptions are created. What was actually happening in the 1940s or 1950s? I look at the partitions slightly differently. I grew up in West Bengal, and originally, ethnically, I'm from Punjab. So, if you look at the partition, it's a very interesting partition. Bengal is a very great example of it, because United Bengal before the partition had one of the strongest, maybe anti-caste movements, in my opinion. The Namashudra Matua movement was a very powerful movement where, probably to my knowledge, there's very little research on it. Nobody is looking at it, but whatever little I've looked at, it's probably one of the only examples where, in modernity, where what we call, scheduled caste were becoming a landowning caste. In that part, and in Bengal, it is quite possible. Like unlike say Maharashtra, for instance, or Vidarbha, you go, land is not so fertile. So you can have eight acre of land also, and still not have a lot of money and still be precarious. But in Bengal, the fertility is so high that even with 2-3 acres of land, you can actually have a lot of money. So there's all across Bengal, especially what is now Bangladesh and was the Namashudras were becoming a landowning caste. And when partition happens, it is a religious partition, but it is also a question of land and caste, because their power is broken on both sides. So on that side of the border, we know Jogendranath Mandal, who had a very important role. He got Baba Sahib in the Constituent Assembly. He was actually the law minister for the independent Republic of Pakistan, and he got very disillusioned, and he left Pakistan and comes back to India, comes back to West Bengal in the 50s. And one of the reasons why he was very upset with the Pakistani Republic was he could see what was happening. It was not just Hindu Muslim, it was the breaking of the land power. that had accrued to, the Namashudra movement. So like many of them were just thrown across the border and they came to India. And the way the Indian Republic treated refugees is also very important. So when upper caste Savana refugees came, they were settled in parts of Calcutta or in Delhi, in Chittaranjan Park and CR Park and all that. Whereas a lot of the Namashudra refugees were sent in those days to Bastar, what is now Chhattisgarh, and to Andaman Nicobar, and like they were just like even in actually parts of Maharashtra in Vidarbha, I think in RV, there is like a small Matua community. Like they just spread them out. So why was the Indian state doing that? It is very clear that from the beginning, the question of caste was very important. When the British leave, they hand over power to some Savarna elites who create Savarna institutions. So yesterday, like I was in a different talk, and there I was talking about how, for instance, in the 50s and 60s, there was a prioritization given to building IITs and IIMs. This is just one example. In a country where in 1940s, 50s, you have only 12, 14, 15% literacy, and you don't have a lot of money, instead of building mass education, school and primary school, and good college at every district level, tehsil level, instead of doing that, you're taking hundreds of crores and you're building one IIT. you know Now all the Savarna liberals also will say, oh, that is great imagination and great ambition. Maybe it was, but what it also created was, like I was saying, I say this very often, I live right now about 10 kilometers from IIT Hyderabad. Huge campus. Any IIT in India, you go, Kharagpur, IIT Delhi, or whatever, huge campus. People who built that campus can't send their own children to that campus, right? एक exclusion तैयार हो जाता है. आपने बनाया है institution, you live right next to it, you live in the झुग्गी झोपड़ी near it, but to enter that institution, you have to go through the route of a huge entrance exam where social capital plays a very big role. Money plays a very big role. Today, competitive exam industry in India is so big that self-study is practically impossible as a route to enter any higher education space. But like in the 50s and 60s, when you were making these IITs and IIMs, who benefited the most from it actually? And it created a class of academic elites, these huge professors with these big names and everything, right? Who were only experts on everything, right? तो वो जो बोल रहे हैं, what they are theorizing, what they are talking about land, what they're talking about labor, what they're talking about caste, what they're talking about everything, was actually just taken as normative truth कि हाँ यही है, क्योंकि is coming from so and so XYZ professor from JNU or IIT or St. Stephen's or something like that. और एक तरीके का India got created as a country of artificial scarcity. I use this very often. India is a society of like manufacturing artificial political scarcity. पॉलिटिकल गुड्स की स्कैरसिटी है एक, ठीक है. Politics is not just me voting and thing. Political goods also means in terms of civic culture, mera access to social institutions, to legal institutions, academics, government public policy. कुछ भी इशू हो, आपका आमदार जो है, एमएलए जो है, एमपी है, आपको क्या एक्सेस मिल रहा है, राइट? एंड इन इंडिया, अगर आप, इफ योर सवर्ना, इफ योर English speaking urban elite, आपको actually you require very little from India. You don't need Indian policies. Actually, you're beyond that. The people who need the most access to policies and and political goods, so to say, for whom schemes are made and all, often have a very difficult access pathway to it. Today also, when our kids from community have to go abroad, and like just the way, like national overseas scholarship will exist, but the way, even if you're eligible, the harassment, like harassment is not policy, लेकिन वो मिलना ही इतना मुश्किल है, right? People will run from pillar to post, some letter from MLA has to come, without which things will not move. So a lot of these barriers are actually execution barriers. And I feel that these have been institutions have been created in such a way that these barriers are deliberate. ठीक है, क्योंकि one core truth of Indian subcontinent is कि Savarnas are a small minority, right? They're 10, 12%, 18%, whatever you want to go with. They're a small minority. If you create smooth access to political goods and policy, and if you open the door, and just by sheer number, we will overpower them. तो इसीलिए every institution, every policy, every mechanism में आप देखोगे कहीं ना कहीं एक artificial inefficiency built है. और ये सिर्फ इंडिया नहीं है, ये साउथ एशिया में भी है. पाकिस्तान एज अ कंट्री डज नॉट मेक अ लॉट ऑफ सेंस, if you study its history कि ये क्यों हो रहा है, unless you see it as a tribal country ruled by Jat landlords, then it makes a lot of sense because the army is also Jat, the landowners are also Jat, and they have to keep their interests aligned. So it makes a lot of sense if we think of it like that. And there are scholars who have actually pointed some of these things out in that sense. So in Indian case, what has happened? I think India was also going very similar path till the 1970s. And then in the 1970s, we start seeing a very interesting development, which actually we didn't see in other parts of South Asia. Marginalized caste groups started coming together politically, ideologically, to negotiate with the state. There is a Lohiite tradition of which is just caste arithmetic. We are 5%, you are 7%, you are 8%. So let us just combine together, and that way we can beat the. In those days, Congress was the most powerful. We can beat the organizational and financial capital of Congress. That is just a pure arithmetic of you take some Ahirs and some Muslims and some other caste, and you put them together and you say, okay, like, okay, we will all vote together in this one way. So that is just one way of doing that. But what Kanchiram Sahib and the Bahujan movement does is एक ideological impetus बना दिया, एक ideological claim दे दिया कि no, it is not just about simply winning election and making ministers and things like that. We have a claim on this nationhood, and claim is based on representation. These slogans which are still till date, people are, I still see on Twitter and Facebook, people will write, jiski jitni sankhya bari utni uski hissedari. Now even Congress, Rahul Gandhi has started saying these kind of slogans. So these are the kind of slogans and these are the kind of political imagination which I think really brought into the political fold a lot of communities जो शायद अभी तक नेशनल प्रोजेक्ट से डिसल्यूशन हो जाते, वो अभी भी है कहीं ना कहीं in huge parts of the country. You have seen this. Anybody in India who's doing grassroots level field work, and I've done a little, I've done work around India, and wherever I've gone, I've seen now the Ambedkarite movement right at the grassroots level, especially in Maharashtra. So very definitely it is there. But even in places like, parts of Rajasthan, UP, definitely it is there, parts of Bihar, even in parts of Odisha, you will find pockets of very strong grassroots level, Ambedkarite Buddhist work which is happening. I live in Telangana right now, currently for my job. In this part here in Telangana, right where I am living, there are very strong Ambedkarite Buddhist network. There's so many Baba Sahib statues, which are built everywhere. Community has built this assertion, and many people have written about it and theorized about it, what this actually means for the movement. तो कहीं ना कहीं ये एक political culture में it has brought into action. Now what we need to understand is, coming back to the original question I started with, how do we make sense of this idea that when the movement is at its culturally is strongest, why are we not winning seats? Why are we not seeing political leaders emerging? And what is the crisis of the leadership? So I could be wrong. Different people have different ideas about it. My theory on that is that, especially if you take a party like BSP, uh, I think BSP, many people say, oh, BSP failed and, जो भी उसका था, उसका goal नहीं कर पाए. I actually think BSP, the right way to look at it is BSP didn't fail. BSP succeeded beyond its own metrics, which is the other thing. Any experiment you're doing, any workshop you're doing, and BSP was also a political experiment. आपका एक failure criteria होता है. Then you think, okay, this is my success criteria. If you do over exceed that, then also it becomes a different form of problem, right? अगर आपका आप you've succeeded beyond the metric. So what used to be the BSP metric? It was an ideological mobilization which was also talking about identity, which was talking about Baba Sahib as an icon, but not just Baba Sahib, but Ambedkarite icons, which was talking about discourse, which was talking about culture, which all of those points actually have gone way beyond the political sphere. वो कल्चरल स्फीयर में आ गया है. कहीं ना कहीं इसके पीछे the grassroots movement, cadre ka ideological commitment in the 90s especially and 2000s is a huge role to play in it. That, now if you go look at culture, people like Rajdeep Sardesai and Barkha Dutt are not seen as, like, especially on caste वास्ट के बारे में उनकी बात अब कोई सुन नहीं रहा है. और अभी से नहीं, 10 साल से नहीं सुन रहा है. Like, they are not considered, reliable or credible interlocutors on caste. ठीक है. तो that has been achieved. That is no small thing. That is a massive thing. कि ये जो एक English speaking सवर्ना cultural system था, actually जिसको फर्क नहीं पड़ता था, which didn't care whether Congress was in power or BJP was in power, if Manmohan Singh is there or Atal Bihari Vajpayee is there, they didn't really care, because all of these, Sardesais and Chatterjees and, they were actually very, very safe. And they ruled culture, media, and they were writing books, and they were the self-proclaimed intellectuals and professors, and इन्हीं का एक पूरा एक ऑरा था, एक दबदबा था. एंड कहीं ना कहीं in the last, especially in the last 5-6 years, I will say after the Rohit Vemula movement also, but also during COVID, during Dalit Lives Matter movement, I think somewhere that section of society of Savarnas has, like, taken a step back and said, okay, no, no, culturally we need to address caste. We can't dismiss it. पहले तो ये dismiss करते थे कि like caste is not important, only it doesn't happen and all that. Now, I have seen this very often. If some Savarna says, oh, caste is not important, other Savarnas are coming and telling, oh, you're not educated and all of that. So one section of Savarnas now has started engaging with caste, and the the lines have shifted. पहले ये acknowledge नहीं करते थे. अब now we need to be careful कि how are they engaging with caste. So this is a major shift, which is a result of that political innovation and intervention which happened in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and the quiet rise of the Ambedkarite, I will say basically the scheduled caste movement, mobilization, parts of Maharashtra, parts of Uttar Pradesh, the quiet rise of that section, जिन्होंने, like, education as a pathway, constitutional means, building myself, my own career, building my community, building Baba Sahib's, and that consistent ideological. Apas mein you can have issues, but like this idea that you're building, kahin na kahin, this has had a huge, huge, you know, dispersed effect on the political culture, which is why I feel these political movements have actually succeeded way beyond. So now the question is no longer about aapki seetein kitni aayi. The question has crossed over into culture, where Karan Johar and all of these people are making now caste movies, right? So in that sense, the movement has succeeded very much. Where it has not succeeded, and which is a question of crisis, is the question of political result. Because ultimately, the crisis for the Savarna political system, जो मैंने शुरू में भी थोड़ा बोला था, and I'm trying to pack a lot of material in 45 minutes. So excuse me if some of the ideas I'm sharing are not very well developed. But India as a political system with institutions governed and created by Savarnas, populated by Savarnas, जिसका main function is a artificial political scarcity. क्योंकि आपको उस सिस्टम को एक inefficient basis पे ही you have to keep. If you, like I said, open the doors and make everything smooth and efficient, as a Savarna minority, you will lose power, right? So you have to keep creating these. So which is why, when people say, oh, India is a broken country, nothing works, I actually say, no, it is working perfectly well. Yeah, आपकी और मेरी गलती है that we think India was supposed to be created like, where everything is equal and all. नहीं, वो website version है. In any company you go, website में they will say, oh, this is good, this is best, this is what our dream is, and this is what I want to do. Actually, in practice, it is a system which has created lots of inefficiencies, right? A good comparison to India is actually a lot of people compare the Ambedkarite movement in India with the civil rights black movement in the US, which is a good combination. But I think the um, correct comparison should be with, let's say, something like apartheid era South Africa, because that is a very clear thing, because there also the white population was about 8-10% के आसपास, and there's a huge black and a colored population. So how do those 8-10% people control 80%, 90% people? The South African model is not like our model. What they did was they just made it illegal, right? तो वो बहुत नजर आता है, right? You're just saying black people can't own property, can't come, can't walk on the street. You made it the law, right? When you do it like that in this age, in this era, when you make it the law, when you make having rights illegal, then you get abuse from all over the world. And there was immense pressure on the South African government to change. And eventually they had to change, after like a few decades. In India, if you notice, we don't have a problem of legality. Baba Sahib gave us a great constitution, and the Savarnas, at least a sensible Savarnas in politics, have always said, "Oh, our constitution is very great. We have great laws. They are. It's not illegal to have rights. What they are doing is implementation में नहीं देगा आपको. Implementation में इतना artificial inefficiency will be created कि for all practical purposes, much of these rights and accesses become inaccessible. Now we have to go and we have to fight a separate battle to kind of say, okay, no, this is right. This is how the Indian system has adapted to this challenge. So by creating these artificial barriers and inefficiencies and creating a political system which responds to this and which keeps this going, um, this 8, 10, 15% has actually controlled power. Now 70 years have passed since almost independence, and they're controlling power, because it's not just about the political power, it is also about cultural power, it is also about discourses, who was in the industry, who are the CEOs, who are the professors, who are the intellectuals, who are the writers, who are the filmmakers. तो वहां पर इनका total control has been kept there. So in that sense, that is how India has been structured. Now, where the Bahujan movement or the Ambedkarite political mobilization, or even something like, the Dalit Panther movement, or any other, like, the formation in Tamil Nadu or in other parts of the country, wherever there has been assertion, it has challenged that in many which ways. And the biggest was the political example of it, because the idea was, ek bar power is a master key. सीट पर मिलेगी, गवर्नमेंट आ जाएगी, तो then we can change the whole DNA of the framework. And that was tried. Now every time you do a revolution, there will be a counter revolution. There is a culture of like you push and there is a counter push. So when this model was created and tested and pushed, before that nobody had like Savarnas had not thought that uh, caste could be such an ideological point of political mobilization कि लोग अपना मतलब गरीब तबका, पिछड़ा तबका, will vote even though for ideological reason. They're like, I don't care. I know this candidate will not win, but I will still vote because this is an ideological question for me. Savarnas had not anticipated this, and they had never seen this before, actually, in a big enough scale. And in many which ways, that was a great success of BSP. But once it started succeeding, I think in early 2000s, there was a period where BSP was doing really well. Even till 2007, I will say, when they won Uttar Pradesh. And like, in the 2009 Lok Sabha elections, Mayawati, when Benji was considered as one of the PM candidates. So if you go and look at how the Savarna culture was responding to that, there was a real fear, there was a real anxiety. Oh, things are shifting too much. So when you do a counter revolution, there'll be a counter revolution. Eventually, what happened since 2012, 13, around the time when BSP loses power in Uttar Pradesh, and after that, nobody has really won. So if you see in the last, especially 10 years, what has happened is a lot of the Savarna parties have basically appropriated the agenda. जो BSP का agenda था, that they have appropriated. Right. So now Rahul Gandhi is talking about like, constitution and, caste, and he's talking about caste census. And because he's doing it, BJP is also now saying, okay, we will do caste census and everything. Now, when the culture shifts, Aam Aadmi Party, when it wins in Punjab, they are coming and putting photo of Baba Sahib in offices and everything. When that starts happening, तो एक तरीके से culturally, like I said, we have succeeded. But politically, you have now taken the political agenda of the political arm. Right. The other thing that BSP, especially BSP more than anybody else did, was Kanchiram Sahib gave this message to the community, you know, that political opportunism is not a bad thing. कि आप जब पावर में रहे ही नहीं हो, when you've never been in power, you don't have the luxury of ideological superiority. उनका famous statement भी है कि I will ally with make alliance with whoever I have to, if it means it is good for community, good for coming to power and everything. In a way, that BSP normalized this idea of political opportunism. Ki if I need to, I will ally with Congress. If I need to, I'll support BJP. If I need to, I'll support CPM. I'll do all Samajwadi, whoever. With the political party becoming weaker, the voter in many cases has said that, okay, political opportunism is a culture. I will give my vote to Congress or BJP, doesn't matter, as long as they are talking about my issue. So in many which ways, again, the culture of political opportunism has moved into political practice. So like people like Congress is realizing now. I don't know how many of you are following the Lok Sabha result. I had actually in my podcast predicted that the number of seats that will come, and it almost hit the exact number in the Lok Sabha election. Now, in the Lok Sabha also, if you see, Congress felt very powerful because they fought the election ke, oh, BJP wants 400 seats to change the constitution. And as a result, Congress got like 99 seats. Basically, BJP number came down a lot. Immediately after that, there is election in Haryana and Maharashtra. And Haryana election is very interesting because in Haryana, Lok Sabha election in April, May, uh, scheduled caste in Haryana and Jats in Haryana are actually very oppositional community. Jats say they are OBC and everything, but they're landed and they're actually very violent and they are the main oppressor. So Jat and the scheduled caste came together to vote against BJP in Lok Sabha election because Jats were upset for farm laws and scheduled caste SCs were saying that constitution. So their interests aligned. In the state election which followed merely a few months later, Congress was pushing the Huda and like basically the Jat leadership, and Kumari Selja and the SC leadership. Congress was not pushing. The SCs said, okay, then we will not vote for you. So no political party should feel that, okay, just because we are, talking about constitution and census and Baba Sahib, now SCs can be fooled, or, the Ambedkarites can be fooled and they'll vote for us. ऐसा नहीं है, एकदम भी नहीं है. That culture of political opportunism has moved into the idea of choice. And that is what we see in the election of uh, Maharashtra and Haryana. And one more point I will quickly make before I know I'm running out of time, because that is again like a very important variable. See, the other important variable is kahin na kahin, India as a economy, as a state, as a policy is also beginning to now struggle. Okay. People who are senior, who are older will remember that in the 80s, India was not looking good. India ki economy, job, corruption, there was generally a very big stagnation. Now people think in the 90s, just because of Manmohan Singh's budget, like overnight things changed. If you remember, things didn't change overnight. It took a long time, even in the 90s, right up till 1998, 1999. Matlab, it was not a seismic shift. It was not overnight, right? But by early 2000s, we started getting the message that, okay, things are slightly changing and India is like, on an upward curve. ठीक है. तो 2000s में तो बहुत ही माहौल था ऐसा कि इंडिया इज नाउ राइजिंग, एंड तो एक बहुत एक्साइटमेंट था, एक्सुबरेंस था. Political parties started talking about quote unquote development as a issue. I was in Andhra. I think Chandrababu Naidu was the first one who started using the word development in election rallies, and then everybody started, using it, and we started seeing these kind of, declarations that, we will make Bombay as Shanghai and next Singapore, Hyderabad, and all of that. Everybody started doing that, and somewhere, the rise of IT industry and all that kind of gave this message in the large section that somewhere, India is rising, things are becoming good, economy is developing, and like, we are on the rise. So even though the marginalized voter in rural, semi-rural, backward state areas, even though they are not benefiting from, Infosys or Wipro, they understand कि कुछ हो रहा है, right? तो हमको इसको support करना चाहिए. तो politically, that culture also came at a time when BSP as a party and Ambedkarite parties, caste politics were seen as, and this is where the Savana cultural power is so important. They created a major campaign that, oh, what is this caste? You're talking about backward, you're talking about, Purana issues, we are talking about IT and the future, let's talk about development, let's not talk about caste. तो कहीं ना कहीं उन्होंने एक बहुत माहौल ऐसा बनाया. Now, this is 2025. It is not 2005. 20 years have gone by. और कहीं ना कहीं इस कंट्री का एक सेक्शन जो था, मार्जिनलाइज सेक्शन था, have now slowly, they've been very patient, but they have come to realize कि okay, ये development, Shanghai, Singapore is not going to actually. And I think the COVID actually had a huge role to play in it. Demonetization also, but COVID also. Like a lot of Savarna intellectuals, they get very surprised. I think now Manu Joseph or somebody is writing a book, Why Don't the Poor Just Kill Us? ठीक है, ये उनका सवाल है कि हमको मार क्यों नहीं देते ऐसे. ठीक है, क्योंकि डिमोनेटाइजेशन के बाद a lot of these Savarna urban people were like, oh, public will punish them because they've really, tortured the public. Nothing actually happened. COVID may also we saw these huge migrant lines, and basically the government ने हाथ खड़े कर लिए कि we can't support you, we can't help you. So Bombay से लोग पैदल चल चल के, like, they were walking all the way to Bihar, UP, MP, and nobody went home and rioted. Nobody burnt anything. There was no political tsunami, earthquake, nothing happened. I think the poor and the marginalized and the castes in the country understood कि ना government से नहीं होगा. The scale of the problem is too big. These people can't solve it. Somewhere they've internalized कि if the crisis hits us, they are not able to help us. This is not a question of a political party being corrupt or a political leader being, bad. The system can't support us. So they have quietly changed their political culture also. So post COVID, if you now see, the voting pattern is about नहीं नहीं तुम मेरे को क्या दे रहे हो, मेरे को ये मत बोलो, बीजेपी, कांग्रेस, this, that. Tell me, what are you going to do for me? What policy are you bringing? Ladli Behna or welfare or farm loan waiver. What are you going to do for me? Based on that, I will vote. I'm not going to any longer vote on this double engine development and all this hawabaji of IT sector and all that. That era is gone now. So that era is also shifting. Now, just yesterday, day before, Donald Trump has also said India dead economy. And now you see like the Savana elites of the country are beginning to kind of accept कि yeah, India in 2025 is nowhere close to what we thought India would be in early 2000s. तब तो हमको लगता था 2020 में India will be developed and 20th century will be India and China, Asia economy. None of those things have actually materialized. आप जितना भी टीवी पे बोल दो $5 trillion economy, this, that. Actually, in real terms, rural India, things are actually falling apart. So that has also had a major impact on political culture, right? So I think the last 10, 15 years has been the worst era for caste-based mobilization because the voting pattern was going in a very different way. The Savana culture was responding differently. And kahin na kahin, I think maybe the political leadership also did not really know how to respond to these changing counterculture. The pendulum is swinging back. We'll have to wait and see what direction it takes. Right now, we are witnessing, as of today, in the current scenario in 2025, we are seeing both the leading national Savarna party are talking about caste in progressive way. Under whatever they think, but at least they're coming out and saying that, we have to do this, we have to do this. How much seen it remains to be seen. And if they start acting in caste progressive ways, it fundamentally changes their party. If Congress actually starts doing what Rahul Gandhi is saying, it will change Congress as a party. Same way with BJP. If BJP actually starts doing what their policies are saying, it is no longer going to be the same BJP, right? I think that is a more fundamental question in terms of political culture. In both Congress and BJP, lot of leaders from SC/ST and OBC communities have quietly gone and made like little space for themselves. उनका पॉलिटिकल एस्पिरेशन क्या है, राइट? उनकी ग्रोथ कैसे होती है? इनको स्पेस तो मिल गया इन पिछले 10-15-20 साल में. Where will they now take the party will actually answer a lot of these questions. So right now, these are the very big variables, and this is what we should think in terms of looking at the political scenario. Otherwise, generally, I see a lot of Ambedkar discussion. They look at election result like cricket score. क्या score हुआ, कितने seat मिली, oh, we didn't get any seat, हट तेरी का, and all that. That disappointment I fully understand, but I think somewhere we need to also look at it in terms of a more structural phenomenon कि ये कहाँ से आ रहा है और कहाँ जा रहा है. So I think I'm done with my 40-45 minutes. बहुत सारे ideas मैंने introduce करने की कोशिश की है. I don't think I could do justice to all of those ideas in this time. But like, I'm sure, like, since it's a small group, we'll have questions. And I respond to every question very extensively. मेरे से छूट नहीं दिए जाते. So I'm hoping in the questions, we can respond and adjust it.
Thank you, sir, for your detailed and historical and contemporary insight into the topic. Now, if anyone has any question, please raise your hand, or you can simply type in the chat box.
Yeah, I think.
Haan ji, I think
Okay. I'll let Satnath ji ask the question. I can always get back to you. Yeah.
I think someone raised a hand.
Yeah. Satnath ji, please go ahead. You can ask the question. I will go later.
Oh, okay. I have unmuted myself. Oh, okay. Um, so I don't know. I was wondering, like, whether Dr. Ravikant ji uh, is is it Dalit or OBC or what, or Savarna, or and whether he teaches somewhere. He's apparently he has PhD or a medical doctor. So could he? The first few minutes, I unfortunately I missed, but probably you have introduced him to the audience. So could he just briefly give me, because I couldn't figure out. Oh, he talked mostly about Savarna politics, and then what is the Ambedkarite politics right now, or Dalit politics right now. I couldn't get uh, make any sense. Any uh, So I'm a little confused. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so just to briefly respond to sir, I come from OBC background, and I'm a professor. I have a PhD in culture studies. And the reason why I'm talking so much about Savarnas is I've just uh, written a book called Meet the Savarnas. And the way I look at caste is from the lens of Savarna politics. And that is the lens I have taken, because this is my understanding that even if you look at politics of race in the US, there are a lot of black scholars who look at racism as a white problem. So, like, there are, like, if you go to any university in India and you look at the PhD topics on caste, there will be lots of PhDs on, Dalit culture, tribal culture, and Ambedkarite movement and all that. And usually the guide is Savarna and the scholar is from community, or sometimes scholar is also Savarna. But if you try to research about Banya or Kayast or Brahmin or so on, you'll not find anything. So there's hardly any work on that. And that is important for us because if we don't look at the political culture and structure from the way Savarnas are, from the Savarna point of view, then we have only one side understanding of how the system is from our perspective, which is why that is what I have focused on. Uh, like there are many scholars who are much more qualified than me, who can speak on the Dalit point of view, and like, and मेरा location भी नहीं है. I come from OBC background, so there are many important people who can speak more clearly on that. So which is why I tried to, even the topic of today's study was exactly that. I hope I've responded to you. And like I said, I have a PhD. I in the introduction, also in the chat box, also I think it's been written. I'm an associate professor and associate dean at this place called Boxon University. It is near Hyderabad, and I have over 10 years of teaching experience. And yeah, so that is sort of my background, also a little bit. If there's anything more you need to know, you let me know. I'll be very happy to respond to you, sir.
Okay, first, um, what subject did you teach? And then I want to just mention here that you see in the electoral system that we have, it's called first past the post system, or winner takes all, or plurality system. So there, if you look at the parties, if there are generally more than two parties. These days, of course, they are basically getting into two coalitions, either NDA or opposite to the NDA. This time it was named as the India coalition. Rest of the parties don't have any chance because any party in a multi-party system in this system to win any seat, then they must have close to 30%, more than 25%. Or when it gets to basically two blocks, then it even more than 35% vote to get any seats at all. So, in fact, if you go down to 20%, then there is zero chance. That's how BSP, in spite of getting 13% in Lok Sabha, got 0%, zero seats, zero out of 80 seats in the Lok Sabha, and I think one seat out of 400 and some 2 or 404 seats in the assembly election. So one has to form a party which has following of more than 30% to win any seat. Otherwise, it has to be an alliance, a coalition. So under that kind of system, these days, now, of course, the BSP has shrunken down from Dalit voters down to just they are attracting primarily Jata or Chamar votes. And even among them, if they continue to fight election by themselves, it will come down considerably less, because even the Chamars will find that what's the point of voting for BSP if it's not winning any seats at all? So right now they are not. They're either.
Satyanath, can I interrupt you? Do you have any question? Because your discussion is
I'm stopping here right now.
Yeah. Please come to the question. So that way guest has the time to answer it.
Thanks.
Okay, I think I'll just respond to what sir was saying. There are a couple of things here. I am well aware that the electoral system and the percentages and things like that. I think you wanted to know what my PhD is on and stuff. My area of expertise is culture studies, and I look at critical caste studies, politics, and political communication. I have looked at also very carefully, and I research caste from this critical caste studies perspective. Now, coming to the election, very simply, we have to kind of understand. You're not wrong. You're very right. To win an election, you need around 25, 30, 35% vote also. Depends on the state to state and region to region. But in India, no consolidation gives you 30% vote. So every political party fundamentally has a core voting block, and they need to add other voting blocks around it. Now, there are two ways you can do it. Bihar election, which is going to come right now, is a fantastic case study of that. You have something like RJD. RJD has core voter of Yadav and Muslim, right? Just by Yadav and Muslim core votership, it cannot win Bihar. It needs to add more people around it. BJP has core voter Savarnas, which is, Brahmin, Baniya, Bhumihar, and all that. That is a core voter. BJP also can't win just basis of that. They also need to add more people, which is why Nitish Kumar has all carved this nice little space for himself. Okay, his co-voter is Keodi Kurmi, but also a lot of EBCs and some section of Dalit votership within the state. So whichever part where Nitish can take this, if he aligns that block with Yadav Muslim, they win. If he aligns it with Bhumihar Brahmin, it will win. RJD will not be able to get Brahmin Bhumihar vote. BJP will not be able to get a lot of Yadav and Muslim vote. Muslim voter definitely not. So it is neatly aligned. Now there is and this is, by the way, Bihar has been in this position for last 20, 25, 30 years actually. It is frozen. No block can actually take the other. Sabka core what? Ekdam core hai. Now, how do you grow a party? You can do it two ways. Either you can make an alliance with somebody else's core voter. So I bring my core voter, you bring your core voter, which is what Nitish ke saath you make an alliance and you win. The other thing is Nitish has been unreliable. So what RJD is doing is in Bihar, they have gone and given great amount of space to a party like CPI-ML, which is a communist party, but it has substantial, SC votership in certain parts of Bihar. So therefore, there is no clash. CPIML is bringing that plus SC vote, Yadav Muslim vote they are bringing. So it's a good alliance. Now, a party like Congress doesn't really have a core votership left in a state like Bihar, which is why it is struggling. Now, this is true in 2025. This kind of arithmetic has been true in 1975 also, before that also, because no group has 30% core votership. It is very difficult. So either you have to make alliance or you have to bring more groups into your fold. BSP model from day one was ki you have core Jatav voter, especially North India. You have the Chamar Jatav voter. You add to that these, what we are calling, lower OBC castes, right? So you add to them all these Rajbhar and Nisha, then, all these really lower castes. And that way it adds up. That's the idea of Bahujan, the idea of Bahujan as a political thing, that you have the core SC vote, and on top of that SC vote, you add all of this. Now, where the problem has been, OBC voting pattern, especially in North India, actually across India, but North India especially, they are happy to vote, especially the dominant, the more you go up, they're happier to vote for BJP than to work with scheduled caste. This has been a major, in theory of Kanchiram Sahib and BSP, my analysis is, and I could be wrong, my analysis is that there has been major resistance by OBCs. And this, I think, is a historical mistake, and from all of these different communities, because SC leadership has actually fought more for OBC issues than even OBC leaders, like OBC reservation and even caste census and all. Like, it has been led by SC intellectuals, thinkers, activists, politicians. They've really pushed, and in return they have not got the dividend. So which is also the core problem of a party like BSP now, कि अब आप add कहाँ से करोगे? Your voter base is shrinking. 13-15% voter means this voter knows my party will lose, but will still ideologically so committed that I will not vote for anybody else, right? So to win, where will you bring the remaining 10, 15, 20% from? And BSP is constantly trying. In 2017, around that election, they tried to add Muslims. BSP tried to do a lot of Muslim outreach. It gave some success, but it didn't. So Muslim vote started getting split. Some Muslims were voting for SP, some started voting for BSP. Because of that split, BJP actually as a result came with a massive mandate. So now, because of Yogi Adityanath, now a lot of Muslims are like, okay, let's back the party which can actually mount. So now they have consolidated behind SP. SP is now trying to add some non-Jat of scheduled caste by trying to do this PDA and Pichla Dalit and kind of a formation, which is nothing but Bahujan from a different world, right? So in many which ways, these are all attempts to create this formation. And my point in trying to say is that we have to kind of look at the arithmetic in terms of how does a party do actually? What else does a party kind of do in this sense? What are the options for BSP? Right? The Muslim outreach gave mixed results. It gave some vote, but not enough. Right? And as a result of the Muslims, my analysis is they are feeling too much pressure from the state, and there's so much violence that they're like, okay, let's try and go with the party, likely to give Yogi a challenge. So that didn't work. OBC's 2019, Mayawati BSP against all odds did alliance with SP, unthinkable after 90s. She did alliance, put every ego aside, SP, BSP, and even RLD. They all came together. SP voter decided to go vote for BJP rather than BSP. Caste is so deeply entrenched, right? Okay, they will not accept BSP as a party. That is the analysis that I think at least BSP figured out. So they broke the alliance. Like, okay, this is not helping us actually, right? So BSP still remains looking for that missing piece. कहाँ से मिलेगा voter? What worked for them in 2007 was Brahmins voted for BSP. Brahmin and Dalit vote. Brahmins were fed up with the Yadav OBC rule, so they decided to join BJP. Now they will also not vote for BSP because they have BJP now. BJP has emerged as a strong party in UP, so Brahmins will vote for that. Brahmins used to always, Savarnas in UP always used to vote for Congress, right? And then there was a period of 15-20 years where Congress weakened in the state. And then now BJP has emerged as their alternative. So BJP is their party, they'll vote for them, right? So in that sense, this is a big problem for a party like BSP in North India. Can't really find that missing piece in that thing, right? Someone in the comment has also mentioned, Rahul, is BSP going to be a dead party till someone takes leadership? How will Ambedkarite take social mobilization? See, this is a very important question, but this question assumes that all the problem of BSP is a leadership problem. And I'm not saying that leadership is not to blame or everything is good. I'm sure there are things which can be done better, but it is not just a leadership issue, right? It is also exactly what I was just saying. ठीक है अब whether it is Benji Mayawati leading the party or whoever is leading the party, how do you make up for that extra 10, 15, 20%? If OBCs are not going to vote for you, Kanshiram Sahib's mobilization, BAMSEF and BSP went into communities like I mentioned, Rajbar, Nishad, all of these small EBC communities, what are now called lower OBC communities. What was the solution? They were all given political vocabulary by BSP. Varna, a lot of these communities were not even politically, quote unquote, visible. Parties never used to engage with them also. BSP brought them into the political spotlight. What did they do? They started making their small minority parties, minor parties, and they will negotiate. Now, with BJP, give us 1 or 2 seats, we will become your ally. Right. So they have started bargaining for that small thing. Now you can call it betrayal, you can call it political opportunism, whatever you call it. Right. The point is those communities have also understood that my 5% or my 3% matters a lot. Right. So कहीं ना कहीं उन communities की leadership का question है more than BSP का question. So question really should be asked about, like who is the leadership of, let's say, a community like Nishad or Rajbag? Why are those communities, like what has that leadership delivered to that? Just because you're from my caste and we are both, OBC or EBC, jo bhi hai, Like, I should vote for you. What have you actually done for me? Right? I think that is a leadership question in which has a impact on BSP's politics. Right? So this has been a very major issue. Whether it is going to be a dead party or not, I don't know that, because personally I feel, BSP's worst years, or any Ambedkarite party worst year, was from 2012 to about 2020 to 23, or 2024 bhi aap le lo, because this is the period where Savarna interest really consolidated very strongly, and a section of dominant OBCs also very strongly aligned with Savarnas. And I think now there is a shift, mainly because last 20 years of economic policies pursued by the Indian state has actually brought huge problems. Public sector has shrunk, jobs, income, everything is becoming harder and harder. So kahin na kahin, people who were naturally excited, they are also rethinking their political equations and their political choices, right? And the leadership of BJP, which had kind of brought this huge counter revolution, they are also becoming older. People like Narendra Modi and Amit Shah, they're becoming older, and they've been at the power. When you are at the top level for 10 years, more than that, before that in Gujarat also, kahin na kahin, you also start becoming vulnerable. This is the law of politics. You start becoming vulnerable to, younger or newer political forces. So all of these things are sort of combining right now, and I feel it is creating a new political spaces are opening up. How they open up, what will be the impact on a party like BSP or Ambedkarite movement, it will become clearer in the next 2-3 years. But the next 2-3 years, there is much more possibility than in the previous 5 years. So the next 5 years, there's much more possibility in the last 5 years. Also, the interesting thing is, dead party आप बोल रहे हो. Interesting thing is, like I said in my, so culturally the movement is at its peak. इतना आपके पास जब कल्चरल कैपिटल रहता है, उसका पॉलिटिकल मोबिलाइजेशन कैन एक्चुअली, like, it will not start from zero. It can really pick up also very quickly. So we'll have to see how those kind of forces work. I'm just quickly reading some of the message questions which are there. Lalit has asked, what are the challenges with Savarna not engaging with anti-caste movement? We historically see in US and many countries, people across background are engaged in anti-racism work. Excellent question. I think the main issue is that, um, although I will say even in Europe and US, there is a strong backlash amongst white people also. Like, yeah, I don't live in US, but even I can feel it culturally. And I studied discourse and I study culture a lot, popular culture and, political communication. It is very clear that within a country like USA also, there is a strong backlash against, things like Black Lives Matter and all that. Otherwise, a Donald Trump and a, MAGA movement, I don't think can become what it is, right? You go back to the Obama years, and from the Obama years to 2025, I think there is some backlash, but definitely I will say in Europe, in and European countries, so they're becoming increasingly openly racist, anti-immigrant, and, like, even I'm reading new reports now. A country like Ireland, is the attacks on Indians actually is going up. And I think today or yesterday, Ireland government told Indians, or, like, immigrants, ki don't go in remote areas, like, don't travel alone. Somebody will come and basically beat you up or something like that. So we are seeing a major backlash actually. The era of, woke globalization, one big country, that neoliberal ethos, I think globally is fading. But despite all that, I will say in a lot of those countries, there is a section of white people who feel, historically colonialism was bad, imperialism was bad, racism and slavery was bad. They inherently, deep down inside, feel that. They don't take pride in that. They may be benefiting from it. They understand that their society is built on institutions and collective wealth, which is a result of colonialism, which is a result of exploitation, racism, slavery, and all that. But they are not very proud of that. So somewhere in their culture, they are trying to figure out, okay, how can I do the right thing? This is an important question for liberal white people, I would imagine. Many of you, since you live abroad, you probably know this more than me, but this is my understanding. In caste, what happens is Savarna are actually not ashamed of casteism the way I would imagine white people or the liberal white people are ashamed of or not proud of. Let's say, let's use not proud instead of shame. They are not very proud of colonialism. But Savarna are actually, no, they are not coming out and saying we are not proud of our caste. They will say we don't like certain things. We don't like untouchability. We don't like, let's say, honor killing. If you're very liberal, urban, English speaking Savarna, or if you live abroad or you study abroad, you will say that, okay, I don't see casteism and all that. Maybe they will even say Jai Bhim, right? But if you ask them, which is why, going back to what I was saying earlier also, which is why it is very important to study Savarnas. The true test is you ask them about their own caste and culture. Casteism के बारे में मत पूछो. Untouchability को, like, they will come and say, yeah, this is very bad, and manual scavenging, I critique it. Liberal Savarna will not come and say, no, I support untouchability. That they will not say. But it is very important to go and ask, okay, what about your own caste culture and caste history? Right? You need to ask Banyas about this. Like, uh, they are actually very proud. They will say, I'm a Banya, I'm good at business, or I'm Tamil Brahmin, I'm good at math. तो आप तो pride ले रहे हो actually उस चीज में. तो how will you then engage with anti-caste movement in any serious way? Right? That is a very big difference. So white people, liberal people can still, do more sincere work in the context of racism because many of them don't take pride in colonialism. But in Savarna culture, they can say that we don't support untouchability, but they take pride in their own caste, Kayast culture, Brahmin culture, and things like. In fact, this will become very controversial if I say this on social media or somebody says on social media. They'll say, no, why should I not take pride? Liberals will start saying that. I am not a casteist. I don't support untouchability, but I'm proud to be Brahmin. Like they'll say that, you know. So in that sense, everybody should be happy with what they are. I'm not saying be ashamed, but I'm just saying that is a major difference in terms of why Savarna culture will not engage with very seriously. And for us also, therefore, it becomes very important to understand कि जब आप बोलते हो कि आई एम प्राउड टू बी फ्रॉम XYZ caste and I'm also saying that I don't support untouchability and I'm not casteist, what exactly do you mean? Right? आपका सपोर्ट कहाँ खत्म होता है, कहाँ शुरू होता है? आपकी कास्ट प्राइड, where does it begin and where does it end? Those are maps we need to engage with them also in good faith, and they also need to know what this is. So that is how I see it. um okay, yeah. This explains, Pawan sir is saying, this explains whatever steps RPI in the 60s and today's Bahujan Savarna elites will always yes, I think it is RPI. Though I think the senior people in Maharashtra will know much better. I've learned only from them or reading from them. RPI is a textbook case. In fact, I will say, sometimes, when there's discussion on BSP and, there is like, oh, Benji Mayawati doesn't trust any other leader to emerge, and she doesn't decentralize, everything is going through her. Somewhere, and I could be again wrong, but somewhere I think she has, or Kanshiram Sahib and her, they have looked at the example of RPI. RPI was a very textbook kind of a in those days Congress model of taking over political assertion. To an extent, BJP also does that today, where they will go to a party, they will make some alliance, they will give you small benefits, they will take some leaders. The leader who is not fully, agreeing with you, they will create a secondary leadership. They will take somebody from that community only, and then they will put them against. So there are many strategies, the way RPI, because again RPI 60s and even 70s is a great example of this, that culturally the people were ready for it, but the political mobilization is a very different thing, right? uh, Culturally people can be like, we fully support this, but there are so many strategies. Also, the thing that we have not discussed so at all in this talk and question answer is the political economy of elections. आप लड़ोगे कैसे election, right? Political party does not sell t-shirt, or there is no goods. It's not a business. But elections cost money, right? According to Election Commission of India, there is an upper limit beyond which you should not be spending in a election. So I think there is some 25 lakh or 40 lakh in a Lok Sabha constituency. So although that is a very ridiculous limit, 25 lakh rupees, if I am fighting a Lok Sabha election, I will finish it in 5 hours. Forget a 5-month campaign. But let's take that figure only at face value. If I take 25 lakh rupees, India has 540 plus seats. So if I just want to contest in all the seats like BSP does, right? 540 into 25 lakh rupees hai kiske paas? Right? Where do I arrange that money from? To arrange that money, what political parties do is they have to take in the MLAs and all of these people. These are political entrepreneurs. These are basically thekedars. These are basically real estate people, mining people, transport lobbies, people who have big businesses which rely on government contract and some benefit from being part of the government. So if I'm a real estate guy, or or a builder or something like that, I don't mind putting 5 crores in an election, right? So I will come to your political party and I will say, I will give me a ticket. I fund my own, like 5 crores I will put for my election. 1 or 2 crores I'll give you also as a party, so that you can support some other candidate who doesn't have so much money. So you will actually give me a ticket, because I'm giving you extra 1 crore and I'm taking care of my own election campaign. Now I will fight that election. If I win and my political party also wins and we come in government, then from that 5 crore investment, I can actually make 50 crore in the next 5 years. That is the real political economy. It's a business investment. Or the other option is I play the long game. कि मैं election जीता, मेरी party हार गई. Okay, so I won the election. Now my choice is to sit in opposition for 5 years. Right now, Chanakya will come and say, "Ke, why are you sitting in opposition? Come over. आपका तो 5 crore गया, अभी loss में भी हो आप." So many people will cross over. That's why MLAs cross over very easily, MPs and all that. But if I am in the long term game, मैं क्या करूंगा? I have invested 5 crores. I won the seat, but my party is in opposition. Okay, I will sit for 5 years in opposition. Now, next time there is an election, my party will trust me more. They're like, this guy sat in opposition for us for 5 years. And next election, I will contest again. I win my seat, and maybe this time my party also wins. Now I will get a ministership or some important position. Right. As a result, for me now it was a 10-year plan, but my return on investment is much big. I straight away have ministerial access. So that's how elections are fought and won. So who will fund those elections? So for a party like BSP, this has always been a challenge. Okay, how will you fund these elections? VBA also has the same crisis. Like, where do you get it? Your candidates are themselves, often coming from very precarious background. So this is why it becomes a challenge. And a well-funded party like a Congress or a BJP or any of these guys, they can very easily, like I said, from the 60s we are seeing, very easily confuse the voter, confuse the party, co-opt them, break them, create a parallel power center, create some appeasement. They can do lots of things, and that's what tends to happen, which is also another major challenge. So after something like RPI in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, like the way the Congress did it, maybe that's the reason why BSP doesn't trust creating a second rung leadership, because then it becomes very easy for a BJP or a Congress to, do business with them. So one good thing about BSP is you don't see 5 factions of BSP or 15 factions of BSP. That has not happened. Maybe that would have been worse. So we don't know actually what the real, unless someday Benji Mayawati comes and gives a, like, writes a book and tells us why she makes these decisions. We will not know. We will only guess. Um, you spoke.
Yeah,
Rajiv is saying you spoke. Huh,
I think
sorry.
we have a couple hands raised. I think let's take a couple questions due to timing limitations. Dhananjay, do you have a question? You can unmute and please go ahead. In the meantime, Dhananjay is having technical issue probably. Anil, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Jai Bhim, Vivek, and Jai Bhim, Dr. Ravikant. It was nice talking to you yesterday. The question is, the fight has always been about haves and have-nots, rich and poor, privileged, underprivileged, Savarnas and downtrodden, whites and non-whites. In fact, the haves, the rich, the privileged will create structures to perpetuate this inequality, let it be economic, social, or political. And this is what is clearly articulated in Constitution preamble, that we should strive to bring equality, social, economic, and political. Whenever there is a fight in existing structures, they will try to kind of discredit the movement. They will say caste doesn't exist. They will say, oh, you are a communist, just because poor are kind of asking for their rights and so on. Many Ambedkarites struggle with this dichotomy of capitalism and communism. And someone like, say, Mamdani, who is fighting for the New York mayor, and Kshama Sawant are branded communist, despite they trying to make a clear distinction between communism and socialism. How do you address this confusion amongst the Ambedkarites? Thank you.
Thanks, Anil. Excellent question. Again, I will say that since I'm not in the US, whatever I'm saying, please take it, with a pinch of salt, because I feel that from, even though I study the popular culture and political communication, being there is very different. My understanding of US society is that political ideologically, it can't be compared with Indian society at all. This is a country which is literally born out of a taxation dispute, right? They never fought a freedom struggle against an colonial occupying exploitative force which looked down on them racially or culturally or whatever. It was a fight between two group of elites, merchants versus the king. Basically, the question is who has authority. So the entire American political experiment from day one is deeply coded into the idea of free commerce. And free commerce for whom? Like, broadly, the pursuit of happiness is for every American citizen, but the implication is very clear. From the days of Ben Franklin till the days of today, it is very clearly from, the Zuckerbergs to, the Washingtons, very clearly it is for commercial elites, which is why the US becomes a natural center for, number one, in the 1800s and especially 1900s, when it has become the global power. US is the main political power which created the international system of commerce and things like that, which is why The US empire looks very different from the British empire. They are not very interested in old forms of colonialism. Okay, kabja kar liya and all. They're very interested in creating international institutions which allows American capital to go out, which is why US is a natural enemy of, the when communist movement emerges in Europe in the 1800s and then in Russia in the early 1900s. So unke liye this is a very existential question. Like even after the Great Depression and the 1930s, for the US, this is US political culture. This is a very deep existential culture question mark, where anything to do with, which is speaking the language of working class rights and this that, turant they become agitated and triggered in a way that I don't think we fully understand, at least I don't fully understand in Indian politics. Because in Indian politics, even the elites will try to talk in the language of, pro-poor and things like that. Right. So Indira Gandhi, Garibi Hatao was a winning political election in the 1970s. So यहाँ पर, like, even though Indira Gandhi is herself very elite and, like the Nehrus, they're not really a working class family which arose. They were actually quite wealthy, still are actually. So if you see that, like, I think here we understand politics in a very different way, right? Even whether it is, Narendra Modi, whether it is Rahul Gandhi, they will all talk about, politics of, like, we have to, workers and poor and farmers have to be taken care of, and, labor and all that. They will still talk about it, but I think in the US that changes very differently. So someone like Mamdani will immediately be seen as a very, very, like, problematic guy, even though he himself is, I don't think he comes from a working class background. I've looked at a little bit of whatever is public domain information. Like, his father is a Ivy League professor, mother is famous filmmaker from India. He's like, like when you compare Mamdani to the actual New York elites, people who run Wall Street and all, he comes across as, much more humble. But in absolute terms, he's really not humble. So I think in countries like US, this question of communist versus capitalism is framed in a very aggressive and format. I think for Ambedkarites, at least my understanding is, you go with whatever is the prevailing culture of the country, right? Should the American workers have more rights? Should they have more, better healthcare and things like that? Many Republicans will also agree with that. Many Americans will agree with that. But the moment you start framing it in the language of the way Mamdani has done, that makes them uncomfortable. So I think that's a line we should also broadly walk. In the context of India, the answer is much simpler actually, because in India, the haves and have-nots, class and caste mapping is very, very closely aligned. You can't say that, like, poor have no caste. ऐसा नहीं है, ये बहुत clearly जो political economy में बोल रहा था, who are the elites, who own the lands, who own the businesses, who own the cultural institutions, and they are constantly reproducing themselves generation after generation. ऐसा नहीं कि 70 years में diversity आया है, कि, more marginalized groups, more SC STs and lower OBCs have entered these areas of economy, technical education. Actually, वो नहीं हुआ है. Even in the era last 25 years, due to this market reform, MBA, engineering, jobs opened up. So if you could crack the entrance exam, although that is a huge disadvantage to us, but still so many of us managed to get in there. And even there we are seeing, like, the leadership of these companies, access to capital, long-term growth. It is very clear कि वो diversity actually नहीं आया है. So in the context of a country like India, so it is very clear the haves and have-nots are also aligning with the caste Varna pyramid very neatly. So if I'm saying that the politics is in the favor of have-nots, It is about like the people who don't have and they need to be given more. In the context of India, that is nothing but the anti-caste movement. you know and anti-caste movement in its form addresses that question. So I think we need to look at these two politics slightly differently, the US politics and the Indian politics.
I think we'll take last question from Dhananjay. Are you able to unmute, Dhananjay?
Yes, yes.
Okay, please go ahead with the
Yes.
question.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Hi, Dr. Ravikant. I am follower of your podcast, Buffalo Intellectual. I really enjoyed your, I enjoyed or got enlightened myself with all the things which you talk about the caste and the discrimination from the higher society or religions. I also even enjoyed your discussions with Anurag Manaswar, who you regularly coordinate with. So I really enjoyed. I just want to thank you for your enlightenment on these topics. I just want to know one small information, like what is the point or your obsession with the buffalo? Just behind the name
What is my
being,
obsession with
Buffalo Intellect. Fellow.
with
The name
Buffalo?
Buffalo, like, straight name, yeah, Buffalo Intellectual.
Okay.
I just want to
Thank
know
you.
that. That's a simple question.
J- Thank you. Lighter note question. Thank you, Dhananjay.
Yes.
Jai Bhim, very nice to connect with you, and I'm glad you follow my work, and even Anurag, who's a good friend. Um, Buffalo, I think I've said this story many times. I will just quickly repeat it. I never had a plan, or I didn't really think very deeply about this. I was in a very dark place in my life because that time I was a professor and I was younger, and there was a lot of caste discrimination like I was facing in my university, and I was very suicidal about it. And I had written publicly about it in Roundtable India article also. I had written about it, and it was a very dark period in my life. And I was around 30, 31 years old at that. No, not 31, 35-ish around. And I was feeling like, I've played it very safe and I've come to academia, and generally, like, in Indian academia, ये तो अभी last 5-6 years we have been able to talk about caste more openly. पहले कोई बोलता नहीं था, बहुत मुश्किल था. So, I've played it safe, I've come this far, and I have a job in a university. And still I'm feeling this suicidal, and I'm like, in such a depression. तो इससे अच्छा खुल के बोलो फिर, like if I have to go, then let me say everything the way I am actually thinking. So with that thought, I just thought I will create a new ID and I will just start talking very openly, because even then I still didn't initially have the courage to call myself by Ravikant. So I thought, let me create a new ID. And Kanchailaya, Professor Kanchailaya, senior guy, we've all read his books. And Why I'm Not a Hindu by Kanchailaya was a book which had a huge impact on my understanding of my own caste, and like how caste operates. And he has a book called Buffalo Nationalism. तो वो कहीं ना कहीं मेरे दिमाग में था, and the word buffalo is used to associate with stupid animal, and in culture, and it's not an intellectual animal, so to say. And I was a professor, and and the way Savarna system operates, no, कि वो क्या करेगा कि आपको they will delegitimize you. So if I am a professor, they will say, oh, he's not a very good professor, he doesn't think very well, his theorization is weak, he hasn't read all of these things, he doesn't read enough. Basically they'll make it like you're unintellectual, you're dumb, you're stupid. So somewhere I felt like, ऐसे तो I'm a professor, it's supposed to be an intellectual, but for them I'm only a stupid intellectual, like a buffalo intellectual. So somewhere that matched. And buffalo as an animal also, I really like. It is a indigenous animal, and a very very hardy and a very resilient animal. So somewhere all of these things came out. Itna socha nahi tha tab, sounded also good, so I put it. But somehow the name has really kind of resonated, and that's why I keep it. So once I revealed also that it is me, Ravikant, I kept that name also. Ki like I am both actually. I'm Ravikant also, and I'm Buffalo Intellectual also. Somewhere both identities have kind of merged. So that is a brief little story about this.
Thank you. I also recall now during COVID period, that's when I started hearing about you. You explained about this. I recall. My memory is very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now it's time to conclude our online Buddha Vihara. I want to thank you, Venerable Banteji, for blessing us with your Dhamma talk. Thank you, kids, for motivational story. Thank you, Anitya. Thank you, Kranti ma'am, for conducting kids session. Thank you, Ravikant sir. And thank you all participants for joining. With this, we conclude today's online Vihara. Thank you. Namo Buddhaya and Jai Bhim.
Okay, Jai
Jai
Bhim.
Bhim,
Thank
Namo
you.
Buddhaya. Thank you.